Anything can happen. The Terminator got kicked in the back by a civilian.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me as always on Twitter at redrock_bball. Today's show also brought to you by hotels.com, by Grip 6 Belts and by UnTuckit. We are going to be doing another season review show today. We're looking at the LA Clippers. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Just a quick mention though. I am going to be doing a couple of NBA real-life mock drafts coming up in the next couple of weeks. And one of them is going to be involving you guys, the listeners. So check out my tweet today about it. Check out my Instagram post about it. But if you want to get involved and be a GM for an NBA team in a completely fake situation and make a draft pick for that team, you can leave your interest in this post. I'm going to be recording it on the 12th of June. That's Wednesday, the 12th of June, US time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. 12th of June, we're going to be recording it. What you need to know is have an understanding of that team you're going to be drafting for, of the draft prospects. You're going to have a Google account. We'll be recording it via Google Hangout and some sort of way to record it. Headphones, some sort of microphone, that sort of thing. And you're coming on, you'll make your pick, quick explanation of the pick for your team, and that'll be it. So if you are interested in that, I've got quite a few responses already, got to sift through them, and there'll be follow-up emails sent out and tweets and all that stuff to the people who are interested. But if you want to be a part of a mock draft, taking over an NBA team and making a first-round draft choice, mock draft that I'll release as a podcast, please respond on Instagram or respond on Twitter if you are interested in being a part of that. Something I'll be trying to do for the first time. Let's see how successful it is. If you guys want to make it successful, you'll make it successful. Let's talk about this LA Clippers team now. 48-34. 8th in the Western Conference, took the Golden State Warriors to 6 games with a couple of surprise victories there. One huge comeback that they had to get their first victory in this season. A real massive year for the Clippers. I wasn't sure. I didn't think they'd make the playoffs. I didn't pick them for the playoffs. They traded away their best player, Tobias Harris, during the season, set themselves up for future years, and also still remain competitive. An absolutely fantastic job by Doc Rivers, who I've been relatively critical of at times in the past, but his last 2 seasons, when he's actually relied on other players and shown some development with these guys, it has worked out pretty well. I still had some criticisms of him because nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So there were some criticisms of things that he did, but it's hard to deny the overall results from Doc. And they also set themselves up for a massive, massive offseason. They played with the 7th best pace in the NBA, the 21st best defense, 9th best offense. Got some really strong performances out of players on their team. They got to the line more than or had a better free throw rate than any team in the NBA. It helps when you've got guys like Lou Williams and the Rooster Danilo Gallinari who are drawing fouls at really high rates. They turned the ball over quite a bit, but they were solid defensively. They had some issues. They didn't force many turnovers, but able to limit opposition shooting. Now maybe there's a little bit of fluke factor in that might be a problem moving forward, but this team, you'd have to think, is going to look pretty significantly different next season, and that takes us on to look at their cap space situation. Without any trades or anything like that, they can get to almost $57.5 million of cap space. That's obviously enough for a one max player. If they trade someone like the Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari, that's $22.5 million off the books. We're talking about getting $80 million in cap space, enough for 2 max guys: Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Tobias Harris coming back, I doubt it, Kemba Walker, Kyrie Irving. There are many, many different options and ways that this Clippers team can go. They're definitely in the mix for Kawhi. You've heard rumblings about these other players as well. They are setting themselves up for a really, really big off-season. Now, they don't have a first-round draft choice this season. That pick's gone to Boston as part of the Jeff Green trade. They have pick number 48 and number 56. But of course, in the future, they have that Philadelphia first-round pick and a Phoenix first-round pick as well. A Miami first-round pick coming as well in 2021, an unprotected pick. So got some assets there, some cap space. It's really setting themselves up well. Now, look at the guys who are out of contract this season. they've got guys who were, apart from Patrick Beverley, which it appears to me that Beverley is gone. I don't think he's going to be back. I think everything seems to be pointing towards him going to the Chicago Bulls. We'll see whether that actually pans out, but I don't think he'll be back. But he's an unrestricted free agent. Baby Neck Wilson Chandler's an unrestricted free agent. Played almost zero part after coming across in that Tobias Harris trade. Garrett Temple and JaMychal Green, both guys who were traded in part of the Avery Bradley deal. Again, helps clear up a ton of cap space for this Clippers team. They're both unrestricted guys, and they played decent enough roles. Green's role was upsized in the playoffs, and they're solid enough guys as 8th or 9th men. But with $14 million cap hold for JaMychal Green and $15 million cap hold for Garrett Temple, those guys are getting renounced. There's almost no doubt about that, to clear that space to try and bring in another a max type of a guy and some other players. And if they don't, you can bring them back. You don't have to pay $14 million for JaMychal Green or $15 million for Garrett Temple. That's not what you need to do. They've also got Scooter Magruder, who they signed on the last day of the season. He wasn't playoff eligible, but they did that to get his restricted free agency right, so he's a restricted free agent. He's a solid enough rotation piece, wing depth sort of player that I think you look to bring back. Also, Ivica Zubac with a really tiny $1.9 million cap hold as a restricted free agent after they swindled the Lakers to get him in what was the most ludicrous and indefensible trade of the entire season. So Zubac will almost definitely be back on that minuscule restricted free agency cap hold. There's the list manager Ty Wallace and Sindarius Thornwell, who both have non-guarantees in their deal, fully non-guaranteed deals. So if need be, those guys could be waived to create that extra cap space, but they can easily get that extra or that max slot without even renouncing the restricted guys and even renouncing all of those unrestricted guys that they don't have to do that. They just need to create some space with two of them. Wilson Chandler, he can be gone. Temple and Green, get rid of those guys and you've got plenty of room there. So you're bringing back Beverley, Zubac, Magruder, Thornwell, Wallace is all possible, but to get to that second max slot, there's some more machinations need to occur for them to them to get to that area, but there is a ton of room that they can acquire here, and they're going to be a huge player in this offseason coming up. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, Locked On Fantasy Basketball. You'll never miss an episode of all our season reviews, of our draft preview stuff, of our mock drafts, and you can do that by downloading the Himalaya podcast app, so go and do that. Also check out our sponsors, grip6.com/lock, LOCKE, UnTuckit, and of course, hotels.com, great sponsors of this show, so go check those guys out. Use the promo code NBA at UnTuckit for 20% off, and use that vanity URL over at Grip6 belts. Great belts. Love the belts that I've got from Grip6, and you can get yourselves a nice discount there. All right, let's talk about these players on this team. The Italian cock, the rooster, Danilo Gallinari. What a season it was from him, the 38th ranked player in fantasy basketball. We know the criticisms of Gallinari, he can never stay healthy. And you know what? Even this season, he didn't really stay totally healthy, but 68 games is the most that he has played since the 2012-13 season. So you'd have to say it was a success. You were able to draft him pretty late in drafts. He had an ADP of 130, and that was one that I harped on to you guys about. You have to take that risk. If he gets injured, oh well, big deal. 9 times out of 10, you're dropping the bloke that you pick in round 12 or round 13. You drop him. But on the situation like this, exactly the same as it was for Tyreke Evans last year. When it works out, it is bloody fantastic, and that's exactly what it was for the Rooster this season. Only 30 minutes a game, but 20 points, 2.5 threes, 6 boards, 2.5 assists, and was supremely efficient. 46 from the field, 90 from the line on 6 free throw attempts. One of the best free throw percentage influencers in the NBA, and shot 43% on his three-pointers. A massive step up from last season. And I talked about his last season. Yeah, he had those multiple arse injuries that limited his season in 2017-18, but the other thing that was really disappointing was he just couldn't shoot. And it made no sense because he's a good shooter. And those numbers came up. He saw a huge spike in his usage, which was always a likelihood to happen, especially with no Blake Griffin there for a full season. And he really repaid that faith. And I had minimal faith. I said, hey, pick him in the last 3 rounds and see how it goes. And here we are. And it worked out well. You'd think he might be able to have one more top 60 or 70 season in him. He is an older player about to turn 31, but it's not outrageous that he can continue at this level if he's in a role similar to this, which if he's traded to create more cap space might not be the case. He led the team in wins added. He led the team in PIPM. He was solid enough, held up okay defensively, but of course all his value really does come offensively. But was a strong player for this team. And we can talk about, they've got 2 nominees for 6th man of the year, but Gallinari was a real driving force on this team, plus 3.4 on off as well. The next guy is one of those nominees for 6th Man of the Year, the table Montrezl Harrell, 71st ranked player over the course of the season, played all 82 games and only 26 minutes a game. It's one of those things I was critical with Doc Rivers about, is that this guy is clearly your best center. Stop playing him 26 minutes a night. We didn't need to see 24 minutes a night from the Polish Hammer Marcin Gortat. We needed 30 minutes of Montrezl Harrell. Now, he still gave us 16.5 points, 6.5 boards, 1.3 blocks, 62% from the field, and 64% from the line. There are clear drawbacks in what he does, and we did see big changes and big improvements. His block rate really blossomed this year. It was huge at the beginning of the year. He was going at comfortably over 2 blocks per 36. That started to come back to earth. His free throw shooting, which had been at 63% each of the last 2 years, was up around 70%, and then that came back to earth. So he was really flying at the beginning of the year, and that did start to drop off as some of those career norms started to normalize, and that's to be expected. He's not a great rim protector despite putting up those good block numbers. He wasn't a great free throw shooter despite shooting well from the line, and those numbers did start to come back to earth. The other thing he did do, though, was increase his assist rate, which was really impressive there as well. Went from 2.1 to 2.7 assists per 36. And Harrell, there's no reason to think that he won't play at minimum 26 minutes a night next season and can push higher. So I think he's a realistic chance to be a top 70 guy again, and probably do that for the next 2 to 3 seasons at least. He can provide that high field goal percentage, scoring. He's a very high usage guy, and if those blocks are able to maintain, that's the risk, I guess, that the blocks don't maintain from what he did over the course of the season, that his value drops off. But really strong. Still does struggle defensively. Had a PIPM 0.81, which is not fantastic. Third on the teams in wins added, and was only a 0.8 on off, which is a little bit disconcerting considering some of the other centers there. Boban was there for a time. Ivica Zubac played a lot. You had Marcin Gortat, who was actually a negative 7.2. And the fact that Harrell wasn't able to be that much of a force in on-off, plus-minus sort of stuff is a little bit concerning. I get the feeling maybe he is a marginally overrated. And if he actually finished next season with a rank lower than 71, like 80, 85, I wouldn't be stunned, because it means that block rate has come back down to earth, and maybe the free throws continue to struggle. But it's not. He could go ahead of that, but he's not he is definitely going to take monster steps forward. I think we're almost at a stage where he is what he is, but give him 3 extra minutes per night, then of course his numbers, they all push forward, and he looks significantly better. Their other 6th Man of the Year candidate, Lou Williams, who is almost going to win that award, definitely 78th overall. A bit of a disappointment with his ADP. He was the 59th ranked player. I thought there was significant chance he wouldn't live up to what he did the year before, where he was the 36th ranked player. That proved pretty prescient. He was never going to play those 33 minutes a night he played either, all the way back down to 27. Still scored 20 points per game. 1.5 threes, which really, for a guy like Lou Williams, he needs to be taking more. He took less than 4 threes a game. He needs to be attempting way more than that. Now, he gets to the line a shit ton, 6.5 attempts on 88% shooting. That is a huge influence in that category. Over 5 assists, but of course, no rebounds, no steals, no blocks, and that really low volume threes is weird for Lou Williams. He should be hitting more. Last year, 2.4. This year, 1.4. So part of the reason his value dropped off was that he played 6 fewer minutes, but also that he just didn't hit as many threes and he didn't attempt as many threes, which is a little bit weird. His free throw rate actually increased this season. His steal rate dropped. So there were some concerning things there with Lou. But he was still, obviously awesome for this team. Defensively, he's an absolute disaster, and that brings his overall PIPM down 0.22 there, which is behind guys like Zubac, Landry Shamet, Gallinari, Pat Beverly, Montrezl Harrell. Not a strong number there. And on-off was just a plus 1.2 because of the defensive deficiencies, but offensively, he's obviously a real force, and you'd expect probably another top 100 season. But Lou Williams had a usage of 34.5%. KD, Kawhi, Butler, Irving, Kemba, whoever these guys are that the Clippers are targeting, Williams is not going to be able to maintain a usage of 34%. The same goes for Gallinari if he's on the team. Harrell at 25%. You'd expect those guys to drop to 24 for Gallinari, 23 for Harrell, 28 for Williams, and that would have a real impact on him. So at the age of 32, with the potential of other free agents coming in, if you're looking in a dynasty league and thinking that you're getting maybe the same Lou Williams again, I'd maybe think twice about that, because there is a real chance that sky-high usage takes a pretty significant hit this season. And for a guy whose value is based on usage, on free throw attempts, on getting to the line, and on scoring, if those numbers drop off, then we might see Lou, maybe he does fall outside the top 100, go back to that season when he was with the Lakers in 15-16. He played 29 minutes a game, only a 23% usage, and was the 108th ranked player. That's not crazy to think that he could fall back down to that sort of level with 2.5 assists, depending on who comes in. So there is some real drop-off risk with Lou Williams, I believe, heading into this season, and the age is also a factor. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I thought was impressive. Hasn't turned 21 yet. All 82 games, only 27 minutes a game, but 11, 3 and 3, 1.2 steals, half a block, 48 and 80 with 37% shooting. Now, he's not a high volume shooter, 37% from 3. Not a high volume 3-point shooter, only 1.7 attempts per game, but he was able to have a high 3-point percentage rate in college as well. Again, on limited attempts, so he's taking the shots that he knows he can hit. Finishing well, 50% overall 2-point percentage is pretty strong for someone like Gilgeous-Alexander. As a rookie, finished at the rim at a really good rate, 61% there. He had some unsustainable success from long 2 range, 48%, which is a little bit of a concern. But you have to like what he was able to provide. Now, he still had some issues, and offensively, he was a massive negative in PIPM, and overall, he wasn't a negative 1.4, but his defensive stuff was strong. I thought he was a very, very good defensive point guard. He was a starting point guard on a playoff team that took the Warriors to 6 games. He still was a negative 3.1 because the play of Beverly, the play of Temple, the play of Williams, all these other guys, the play of Shamet, these other guys who do have impacts. But I do really think there is top 70 upside, top 60 upside for Gilgeous-Alexander. What did he average? Actually, I just said 11, 3 and 3. Can he? I think he peaks out maybe. I don't think he ever gets to become a 20-point per game guy, but maybe he becomes a 17, 4 and 5 sort of a player, like a Kemba Walker in his peripherals, not his scoring. The 3-pointers are the problem, but he's going to be driven by steals and blocks. Can he become a 1.7 steals, 1 block per game guy? I think that is, while it's the upper end, it is a real possibility. He provides that value, which is going to give him a lot of fantasy value moving forward. So it was an impressive debut season. Still lots to work on, and he's far from a guarantee to get to these areas, but it was impressive from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The next guy we look at is the aforementioned Patrick Beverley, the 142nd ranked player overall. Only 27.5 minutes this season, sharing those minutes with Lou Williams, with Shai. His 17-18 season was a write-off from injuries. Came back and was pretty strong, but only 7.6 points, 4 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.4 threes. Poor shooting from the field, okay from the line, but doesn't get there. It was a much better on-court season from him than a fantasy season. He was second on this team in PIPM at 1.59, second in wins added. He provides real value, plus 6.1 on-off. He just doesn't really contribute in the box score, which limits him. Now, if he goes to Chicago, he's already immediately their best point guard, better than Chris Dunn, but he's already 31 years of age. So how much better does he get from here? Will the 27 minutes a night he played in for the Clippers improve to 29? Maybe. Is he a high upside guy? God, no. He's got almost zero upside as a player in terms of fantasy value. Can he get to maybe 12 points per game? Maybe 2 threes, maybe 4.5 assists? That's okay, and that pushes him in that 80 to 90 zone, but getting higher than that is going to be a struggle. But in saying all of that, in his last full season for the Rockets, where he played 31 minutes a night, he was the 64th ranked player. Now, that's in large part because of his steal rate, averaging 1.5 steals with 6 rebounds and 4 assists. They're not outrageously high numbers, and he could get back to that. So maybe the top 100 is in play if he finds himself on a team where he plays 30 minutes a night. But at this stage, is 30 minutes a night of Patrick Beverley what teams are really going to be lining up for? I think if I had to guess that he will be better than this season in terms of fantasy rank, I would say yes. Will he be a top 70 guy? Probably not. Top 100? I think that the odds would say most likely, but it's all going to come down to where Patrick Beverley ends up in free agency. The next guy on the list is JaMychal Green. Some of the season for the Grizzlies, some of the season for the Clippers. I thought he played way too much in Memphis. I thought this was about right in LA. 9 and 6 he averaged over the course of the season. Half a steal, half a block, over 1 3 per game, shot 40%, which is really impressive for a guy who wasn't really a shooter at any point in his career, but up the volume, up the efficiency. True shooting of 60% is really impressive, but his low steal and block rate is always going to hold him back from a fantasy point of view, but he did improve his free throws this season. He gets absolutely nothing assist-wise, and I don't think he'll ever have a top 100 season, probably never have another top 150 season. Again, he only played 471 minutes for the Clippers, -3. negative 0.3, sorry, in PIPM, which is not a terrible number, plus 0.5 in on-off. These are all okay numbers, but he's not a guy that has much upside. He's about to turn 29 as an unrestricted free agent. You wouldn't hate giving him, say, a 2-year, $20 million deal. I think that's fair rate for Green as a 20-minute backup four who can play some 5, who can shoot a little bit and can play passable defense without being a rim protector. He's not a good defender, but he's not a terrible defender. You'd probably say he's above average, above average, but without getting any of those defensive stats. Actually, let's talk another guy that came across in a trade. Ivica Zubac, 185th overall in the year, 18 minutes, 9 points per game, 6 rebounds, 1 block, 56 and 80. That 80 from a big man, you really, really love that from Zubac to be able to shoot that from the line. And he was a guy that you'd think that the Clippers are going to bring back. And unless they're targeting someone like DeMarcus Cousins as a free agent acquisition, which I've never heard, I think that he comes back. He starts the season as the starting center, but you want 29 minutes from Montrezl Harrell, which leaves limited amount of time for Zubac. But he was a massive plus defensively on this team. Really strong PIPM, was an impactful player. A plus 3.8 on-off is really, really strong. I loved Zubac coming in as a rookie. I think he's really putting up some strong numbers now. But is that upside actually there on this team? I think he's back as a restricted guy, so I'm not even considering the option of him on another team. That does limit him overall. And I think if we had to set the over-under on 20 minutes per game for him next season, you'd have to consider it an under, just because of Montrezl Harrell being around and him getting the majority of these minutes. Even though at times you could make the argument that Zubac is a better player in there because of his defensive acumen, which is significantly better than what Harrell does. But of course, as a scorer, Harrell's better. But again, to put this in context, if Kyrie and KD and Kawhi and whatever the combination of those guys come, Harrell's 25% usage, high volume scoring isn't as important. It isn't as necessary on this Clippers team than having a guy like Zubac who can play in there and be a defensive anchor and play around those guys and just be a high percentage finisher who doesn't need to have the ball in his hands quite as much. And maybe then Doc changes it and Harrell does play 25 minutes and Zubac plays 23 because of the structure of the other guys around him. I think that's a legitimate chance. I like Zubac. In a different scenario, if you gave him 27 minutes a night, he's a clear top 100 guy, and I believe he can be that player. I just think getting to that with the Clippers is probably going to be a little bit tough for him to do, despite how well he played. Garrett Temple, perfect role player, great bloke, one of the best blokes in the NBA from all reports. Just one of the worst fantasy players as well, but 27 minutes a game at the age of 33, that's a lot of minutes for Garrett Temple. You don't really think he should be playing that much. 8 points, 3 boards, 1.5 assists. The 1 steal he gets is nice, but he just doesn't do anything else that gets you excited from a box score perspective. Really solid defender, can play the 1, 2, and the 3, although you never want him playing the 1. A negative PIPM overall with the Clippers, but not egregiously so. A plus 1.2 on-off is relatively strong from Garrett Temple. As I said, an unrestricted guy who's likely to be gone and find another team. Getting those 27 minutes out of Garrett Temple again is probably a stretch, and I just don't see a scenario where he is a top 200 player really again in his career. Let's talk Landry Shamet, who was really strong this season for the Sixers and for the Clippers. 23 minutes a game and over 2 threes a game. One of the elite 3-point streamers in the NBA. 42% shooting as a 3-point guy as a rookie is fantastic. 43% overall. 81 from the line. 9, 1.7 and 1.5. And that's the problem. Is it just that unbelievably low rebound rate, low assist rate, low steal rate, low block rate? Where does he provide the value outside of hitting threes? Like that's what he does, and he does it extremely well, like fantastically. Look, the shooting stuff from him has been really, really good. It's not unparalleled, but it's pretty bloody impressive to be able to shoot at that level. But his defensive rebound percentage is atrociously bad. Offensive rebound, atrociously bad. Where does he get better? He was a plus 3 PIPM as a member of the Clippers. Struggled a little bit defensively, but he's not a disaster there. A plus 5.3 on off. You love having him on your team, and you love the fact that he's hitting threes at such a rate, but a low usage guy that is unlikely to improve his usage on this remade Clippers team and then provides no value in any other areas. I reckon now is probably the time to, if you want to consider trading him in a dynasty league, some may overvalue him because he was really, really good on the court and it was a fantastic rookie season. It just doesn't necessarily translate into all-round fantasy value because of those just discrepancies. And a guy that hits 2 threes a game is great, but that's out of 9 points. So meaning he scores 3 points in from 2-pointers and free throws in a game, which is just nowhere near enough. If you're hitting 2 threes a game, you want you to be a 13, 14 point per game guy, and that boosts you up. Basically, all he's doing is hitting threes, and that is it. And his game will expand, and he'll get those other areas, but I want to see a little bit more from him, and it could actually be a bit of a downturn from him depending on what happens with the Clippers in this upcoming offseason. The next guy we talk about is Baby Neck Wilson Chandler, 32 years of age, 23 minutes a game. I just don't see why anyone would want to be playing him that amount moving forward unless injuries strike. He wasn't successful with the Clippers. He wasn't successful with Philadelphia. He's never been a really strong fantasy guy anyway, and his time of being an impactful guy in even 20-team leagues is probably over. Scooter Magruder started out this season unbelievably hot and then fell back to being the same player that we've known over the course of his career. He's valuable as a wing because he can at least take some threes, hit them occasionally, but provide solid wing defense. He just doesn't provide anything. And what he was doing at the start of the season was unbelievable from a fantasy point of view, and you had the feeling it was never going to continue. It obviously didn't continue. He's more a Dorian Finney-Smith type of a player, a guy who comes out and plays good defense and shoots threes and doesn't do anything else. And again, I just don't really see that improvement coming from Rodney Magruder as we move forward. A guy I do want to talk about, the list manager Ty Wallace, who was excellent last season, then signed that offer sheet with the Pelicans, the Clippers match, and then they barely played him. 10 minutes a game across 62 games. Doc had this thing where he just played these guys like Wallace and Thornwell, play them every game and play them like 2 minutes a game. So that means they play a ton of games, 62 for Wallace, 64 for Thornwell, and barely played any minutes. They didn't do anything to really deserve big minutes. And the year before, when there was a ton of injuries, they stepped up and they were fantastic. And I still believe in Wallace and Thornwell, if that opportunity arises, that they can be productive. I just don't think they're going to be forcing that opportunity on teams. They're going to be there as the 11th man, as the 12th man, who can come in and play a 10-game stretch and go, shit, that was really solid from Thornwell. That was really solid from Wallace. And then after that, it drops off. But yeah, I still don't think that they're terrible NBA players or anything along those lines, especially Wallace. I think he can be a solid enough guy. He just isn't good enough to be demanding consistent enough minutes. Speaking of not good enough to demand consistent minutes, Jerome Robinson, the other lottery pick outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 22 years of age, only 33 games, 10 minutes a game. For Robinson, he really didn't get too much going for the team this season. Had a negative PIPM in the G League as well. Shot only 32% from 3.5 points per game. And like Shamet, he does nothing apart from score. And the fact is, he didn't actually score or hit threes. I was really down on him heading into the draft. I was really down on him after the draft. I hated that pick from the Clippers. I think Shamet is who they want Robinson to be. I don't think he's ever going to get there. He didn't look. He had some moments, no doubt, but he's well behind Gilgeous-Alexander and Shamet in the rookie guard pecking order on this team. Other guys come in. I really worry about Robinson. I wouldn't be looking at him as a buy low guy. I think that he probably should have struggled to be a first round draft pick, to be honest, and he went in the lottery. Maybe in the 20s is where he could have gone, but he just doesn't do enough in those other areas. He hasn't shown really that throughout his college career. He's an abysmal defender, and we didn't really see anything to dispel any of that through his tenure with the Clippers. They're two-way guys. Jonathan Motley's always a guy that I want to pay attention to. He can be a high-volume Montrezl Harrell type of a player that when he is out there and the minutes come, then he will produce. The problem is he, again, like Wallace, like Thornwell, he's not forcing those minutes. He's not really demanding to play that role, unfortunately for him. But he's always a name to watch. Well, Doug Gatto, we only saw 2 games of him in a Clippers uniform, so really hard to get too much of an idea there, but he was dominant for the Agua Caliente Clippers, 3.75 PIPM in the G League, really strong offensive sort of a guy, in a similar, I guess, mold to Harrell there in being a guy that can score. He can block shots, but is he, with the glut of centers in the NBA, where does Delgado fit in? Like, where can he find a large enough role? He ended up averaging 18.5 points with 15 boards, which is obviously massive, over a block per game. Solid enough defense, but maybe if they decide not to bring back Zubats, then he comes in there as a second string center. He's done enough to make me think that he gets at least another opportunity as a two-way guy, and maybe as an end of the bench player. But already 24 years of age as well, like Motley, time is running out for him to be an impactful NBA player. That'll do it for the LA Clippers season review. Don't forget to check out our sponsors, Grip 6 Belts, UnTuckit, Hotels.com, and subscribe to this podcast by using the Himalaya podcast app. You can also find us and rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on Spotify, and on YouTube. Subscribe, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell, leave a comment. You know all the ways to do that. Check out my post about the mock draft over on Twitter and on Instagram. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.